Andrew Jackson was born March 15, 1767 in the Waxhaw Settlement, a community of Scotch-Irish immigrants along the border between North and South Carolina. He considered himself a South Carolina native. The year 1824 was when Jackson first decided to run for president against John Quincy Adams, but unfortunately he did not win the election. It was later, in the election of 1828, that Andrew Jackson ran again, this time winning, but by a landslide. One of the first things Jackson did as a president was he issued an Indian Removal Act in 1829. This authorized Jackson to negotiate with Indian tribes in the southern United States for their removal to territory west of the Mississippi River in exchange for ancestral homelands. The Indian Removal Act was passed by Congress May 28, 1830. This was a big part of Jackson's presidency. There were 5 tribes that were affected by the Indian Removal Act by President Andrew Jackson: the Chickasaw, Choctaw, Muskogee Creek, Seminole, and original Cherokee nations. Under this act, the Indians were to give up their land east of the Mississippi in exchange for land towards the west. Jackson stated that the removal was supposed to be voluntary and peaceful, and it was for the tribes that agreed to the conditions, but southern nations resisted, so Jackson forced them to leave. Jackson's attitude towards the Native American tribes was paternalistic and patronizing, describing them as children in need of guidance. Most Americans thought that the U.S. wouldn't expand past the Mississippi, but Andrew Jackson believed that removal would save the Indian people from depredations of whites and would resettle them in an area where they could be in peace and govern themselves how they choose. Some Americans, however, saw Jackson's Removal Act as an excuse for brutal and inhumane actions and protested against the act. The Choctaw tribe was the first to sign the removal treaty, which happened in September of 1830. A small group of Seminoles were coerced into signing the removal treaty in 1833, but the majority of the tribe thought the treaty was illegitimate and refused to leave. This protest resulted in the Second Seminole War, causing a huge effect on Jackson's act. The Second Seminole War lasted from 1835 to 1842 in Florida and is known as the longest and most costly of the Indian conflicts of the United States. It wasn't just Jackson's Indian Removal Act that made the Seminoles fight back. There was a very important leader that helped lead the Seminole tribe into war. His name was Osceola. More than 2,000 U.S. soldiers were killed because of the Second Seminole War. After Osceola's capture, the Seminole tribe left their old territory, leaving the U.S. to have the land for themselves. Afterwards, Native American tribes moved west. Some stayed, but then later moved west as well. Any land the U.S. wanted in the West had to be purchased from Native American tribes who owned it. Andrew Jackson's act, although done, was still remembered, and the Trail of Tears was remembered for the sad times for the Native Americans and many, many deaths as well. He was known as a very strong president, and he is still known as that. But what he did was wrong.